Roll call, please.
Mayor Copeland,
Here.
Tom Baylor,
Here.
Ken Jones is absent, Jeff Guard,
Here.
Melina Meyer,
Here.
Ann Schaefer,
Here.
David Allison,
Here.
David Gleason.
Here.
That's a quorum of council.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Ellison.
move to approve the regular agenda with the addition of Dean Baugh as a guest speaker.
Second.
Okay, have a motion and second, and that would be in relation to the handout from the interim finance director. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the agenda will stand approved as amended. Disclosures of conflicts of interest and ex parte communication. Does council have any conflicts of interest to declare or ex parte communication? Okay, I would just remind council that we're currently under the appeals period for the property taxes. So if an individual business, whatever, approaches you and wants to start discussing the merits of a appeal, remember to direct them to the appeal process because you'll be sitting as a quasi judicial body there, so you don't want to discuss the merits of something until the actual night of the Board of Appeals on April 15th. So, okay, hearing none, we have communications by and petitions from visitors, and we'll start with our amended guest speaker, Mr. Bob.
Okay. So real quick, financial report.
Yeah, get up on the mic if you can there. It's real.
Mayor Mike.
Thank you.
So hi, I'm Dean Baugh. I'm the interim finance officer at this time. So real quick, financial report. I've included 3 reports here for you. One is a fund summary, which details revenues versus expenses up through the end of February. First page is general fund only. Oops, where am I at here? So to note, at the end of February, we're about 17% through the year. It says here we've spent about 20% of the budget. That's nothing to worry about because we have a lot of things like debt service and some big payments that come at the beginning of the year. So you pay 100% of some budgets real fast. So you're kind of right on schedule as the budget's laid out. You get to the next page and it is the overall city, and it's right at 17%. So you're right on target for budget-wise. Revenues, it looks like you're a little bit under budget on revenues. Again, a lot of your big revenues, fish tax, property tax, don't come in till later in the year. So you're kind of on schedule. You collect money at the end of the year, and then here at the beginning of the year, you're kind of using your savings till you start bringing in your big money again. So there's nothing to worry about here. Revenue expenses look really good right now. The next one is your cash balances. One of the projects I'm working on is cash allocation. So what we have here is the city has $3.8 million in cash in the bank. By next month, I'll have a report or sometime in between there that says who owns that cash. How much belongs to the general fund, the port, the water, sewer. I'm working at trying to get another fund set up for health insurance because that's been a big question. How does the health fund work? So we're going to set up I'm working with the auditors to set up a fund to track the health insurance. So you can look at it and say, oh, there it is. It's right in the report. How much money's in there? Is it negative? Is it positive? So as I'm getting ready for the 18 audit, that's one of the projects I'm working on is cash allocation. And when he talked about the 17 audit, we've already started working on 18. So we're already sending things to the auditor. So it's not like we're waiting for 17 to get done. We're already working on 18. And the next report here is, it's a graph showing debt service for the city. The top numbers there show the outstanding balance of the debt at the time. So as of the end of 2018, you had $18,407,000 in debt. And then you can look here and see who it is. 10.8 million is in school debt. And that's the equivalent, it's 4 pieces of debt that you have there, 4 bonds. And then you've got water, sewer, refuge has a little small part, and then the general fund has 4 million. And then you can follow it out to see how it goes down. If you look at the water line, it stays at 2.114. why that is because we have one piece of debt that they're still spending on. They've got about $94,000 more to spend before we get a payment schedule for that piece of debt. But at this time, it's worth that much, so I added it to the debt schedule. Once we get the debt payment schedule, that'll start going down like everything else. So the way this is set up right now, 2037, you're out of debt. And you can see a lot of your debt falls off in 27, 28, in those, a lot of it, some big numbers fall off, and it's smaller numbers. So, and at this time, this does not include the 5 million that we just authorized. You know, that's projected. If you issue that bond, that'll be issued sometime next spring. So this is kind of the summary right now. Like I said, auditors will be on site for 2018 audit, the week of April 22nd, week of May 3rd. So they'll be here. So if you have any questions for them, come on down that week. You can sit down and talk to them. I'm sure they'll want to talk to some of you because one of the things that their audit checklist is speak to some council members and that. So they will want to speak to some of you during those weeks.
Dean, did I hear you say there about a $3.8 million cash balance, or did I hear that right?
For
I thought I heard you say a $3-something million
no,
cash balance.
your cash balance is 13 million.
Okay, great, thanks.
Of that, about 3 million is general fund. When I'm kind of looking at the rest of it spread out across all the other funds. You know, you have your permanent fund there, which is almost 8.1 million. So that's where the UBS permanent fund's at.
Okay, and then I see this has a monthly header. Is the intention for this to be a monthly report like this?
What is that? That's the
This is the fund summary.
fund summary. Yes, that can be printed out each month. That can be printed out any day you want it. It's just a report I can run in and print it.
Well, on behalf of the council, I think it's, at least for the 3 years I've been mayor, been asking for a balance of all the funds. So on behalf of the council, thank you for these reports. So we can see where we're at. And are there any questions, council?
Like I said, the goal is to replace the cash balance or add to it with an allocation report that'll tell you where everything's, who belongs to what.
And this graphic is great too. It gives us a real good feeling for what our debt horizon looks like. So, Councilman Baylor.
Yeah, that was one of my comments. I love this graph. So looking at the school debt, we're looking at the end of 2027, projected to be out of debt. Is that the way I look at that?
Yes.
And now is that in consideration with the governor's,
No, this is actual debt. This does not,
nothing to do
the
with,
number here does not include any of the Department of Education reimbursements.
okay,
So when you see the debt numbers here, right now, you're getting part of that back. If they quit paying you today, this is what you're going to pay.
okay.
And this does not include, if they issue new debt, then it'll be added on here.
All right. Well, thank you. This is very helpful. I like it.
So you do know after giving us something like this, you can never expect to leave Cordova again as long as you live.
I've got this all laid out where it's real easy for somebody to pick it up and look at it and copy it.
Yeah, we can pick it up and look at it every time you do it for us.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much, Dean. I appreciate it.
And the issue for us in our sustainability model is what our annual payment is. I mean, even though our debt goes down, if our annual payment is still $1.9 million a year, that's our obligation. Although that payment decreases annually, we don't get significant relief from that for quite a while.
And if you'd like to see that, you know, behind this graph, I've got it laid out for the next, till 2037, what the payments are. I can jump over, copy those, and make a graph on what your annual payments are too.
And we'll throw that in the next packet for you for a report. And so trying to keep track of that in the budget is what our intent is, because remember our obligation is 43 to 45% of our general fund budget is supporting debt and other institutions. And, you know, if we're going to receive reductions in funding from the state, how you're going to allocate your money is going to be important. The other issue is that in the cash flows, remember our goal was at some point to give us an idea of how much cash we have available in the general fund, how much is allocated to all of the special funds, how much is available, how much is not available, and what we need on a monthly basis to live on to keep us from having to borrow. So if we have 3 million and we need 2.5 million, then we've been successful in our idea that we have a little bit of room to fund things without having to raid the permanent fund or other sources, as we did with the comp plan. We paid for the comp plan out of the central treasury without having to raid any other funds. So that's the goal.
Okay, any additional questions, council?
Mr. Mayor, I have one question about the general debt. Do you know what bonds those were?
There's a
Somebody else.
refuge bond, there's a road bond, and there's one other one. It's,
The Cordova Center, maybe?
yes, Cordova Center. That's right, those three.
All right.
And the refuge bond is split up 80% general, 20% refuge. That's why there's a small number in a refuge.
Okay. Questions, council?
And if you'd like to see that other detail, like I have the spreadsheet or this broke out into payments, so you can look at each year and see what the payment is of that current year, which I said I'll take that and roll it into a chart for you.
It's also up above there, right?
So, okay.
Okay,
Yeah, I love
great,
the-
thank you.
Colored chart. It worked out nice.
Well, I can't do all color chart because they yell at color. It's expensive. Is that it?
Thank you, Dean.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Our next guest speakers are Barb Jewell and Nicole Sonder from Sound Alternatives and Cordova Family Resource Center.
Yeah.
Good evening. Thanks for giving us some time tonight. We came and spoke to the council a little over a year ago about some projects that we were working on under the umbrella of the coalition, the Cordova Coalition for a Healthy Community, which used to be known as the Providers Meeting. And that group has been meeting for over 20 years, involving a variety of both service providers, community members, city staff, businesses, anyone who wanted to be involved in projects that improve the health of the community. So we changed the name about 4 years ago. Yep. And have been working to build the infrastructure since then. I think we provided a handout that really Nicole put together that talks about our mission, which is just to come together to do whatever is necessary to improve the overall health of our community. More recently, what we came and talked to you about was a needs assessment that CFRC applied for a grant for and really did 90% of the implementation in the assessment.
Good evening. Thank you again. I just want to highlight a few things. You have a handout, and it's just a brief overview of kind of what we've found in our community assessment. We were able to have some funds come to us, and we decided that it would be really good to not just focus on domestic violence, sexual assault, interpersonal violence, but overall the health of the community and substance abuse, alcoholism, all of those things that tie into play so that we can have a healthy community. And it had a focus on prevention because that's where our money was coming from at the time. But we kind of looked at it from different perspectives as well. And so not only just the services that we were already providing through Bionic and Girls on the Run and Fourth R, our after-school program, we wanted to expand some of those strategies and not have it just like one-on-one primary prevention, but how it's individual relationship, community, and then societal, and hope for society change at some point. We wanted to work towards increasing the wellness of the community coalition, you know, as a whole community and all of our partners really trying to strive and work together on what we can do to make Cordova a better place. And then we wanted to increase the community readiness for prevention efforts, see where we were, start doing some baseline data gathering and so forth. And so we contracted with Goldstream Group, and some of you participated in some of that survey, personal interviews. There were surveys online that were filled out. We had a large amount of surveys that were completed. And so just some key themes that I think through all the interviews, some was that a general, there wasn't really a general awareness of some of the prevention efforts or things that were taking place in our community. Funding not available funding kept coming up. Some barriers to accessing services, sometimes lack of fear of confidentiality, living in a small community, that's reasonable. Trying to change community and social norms and attitudes, like it's just Cordova, it's a small town, that's how we do things here. These are some key things that kept coming up in the interviews and some of the surveys that we had, and we thought that were kind of point. Some of the things that we asked was what was important characteristics for a healthy community, and some of the positive things that the community members felt that we had. We have a strong sense of a community and connectedness. When we have crisis in our community, everybody pulls together and really helps out. We have low rate of crime, and there's lots of opportunities for youth and people to participate in things. So those were some really good key things. And then when they asked what we felt would improve, better communication, community engagement, collaboration with other community partners, places for teens and mentoring opportunities. And then what are some of your key issues? And this is kind of where we're getting down to the nitty gritty and the coalition. What are some key things that as a community you feel are facing? And again, substance abuse and alcoholism, and these weren't in any particular order. Healthcare, including what's offered, what's available locally, and cost for those things. Physical activity and options, and then the types of violence, interpersonal violence, sexual violence, and child abuse. There's some other comments and questions for you guys to kind of look at overall in our additional questions. As a community, Cordova's doing pretty well as a whole. And there's some stages of community readiness that they look at, and there's, 1 with no awareness and no readiness at all, 2, 5 people and individuals in the community are taking ownership and doing things on their own. And we fall right around a 4.25, which is actually pretty good for where we set, and a lot of the things that we've been doing as a community and a coalition have just been without funds and doing them as we can, piecemeal. And then that kind of goes into what we've come up with, some plans for adding goals into our prevention plan for this next coming year. And so our 2 other goals were to strengthen the coalition and the sustainability of our coalition, and then also some more education and wellness and social media campaigns.
So the last 2 pages of what we gave you are specific strategies and activities that the group intends to engage in. Putting out a lot of information, education, and messaging about factors that lead to better health and barriers to better health. And also, again, facilitating the development of a formal infrastructure for the coalition to create a body that can actually implement activities, can seek out its own funding, can implement strategies, that has a formal executive committee that are decision makers of organizations that can commit resources and time and knowledge and expertise to projects. So we have met with the heads of several organizations, including the mayor, school district, Native Village of EAC, the hospital, and folks have agreed to make commitments to participate. Assign a staff member whose responsibility it is to participate in the meetings, bring decisions back from their organizations around activities, funding, willingness to participate, all of that. So we'll be looking to sign memorandums of agreement, not just understanding, but agreement to do tasks with those folks. And we really appreciate those leaders' willingness to make a formal commitment. One of the things it does for the group is it allows us to go for funding outside of the city of Cordova. We have a group, we can say to the federal government or the state government, we want to do these projects. We have a group that will take responsibility and has the structure to do it. So that will help a great deal. The other piece that came out in the city's needs assessment, the hospital needs assessment, and CFRC's needs assessment is the need for groups to work together. And I think the city's made real strides. If you look at the Cordova Community Foundation, that's a big one. This coalition is going to be a big one. And one of the things that's required to do that is data collection and sharing data. And often we find that there's a barrier. People are worried about violating confidentiality, HIPAA, FERPA, all those rules that govern how we can share information. So we really need to build our capacity to share information. And again, these coalitions allow us to do that. And then a piece that I think CFRC is really going to be spearheading, but with the coalition's assistance, is a community awareness campaign around interpersonal violence, child abuse, substance abuse, and not just this is what happens, mental health, but here are the things that can help with it. So those are kind of the key points of what we're working on. Any questions, comments?
Council, questions?
I guess a comment or question, but on that number 3, developing community awareness, isn't that kind of a tough one there as far as, I mean, we don't want to, like, Cordova's a terrible place. We've got all these issues, and at the same time, we need to educate people that there are issues. And I look at your other bullet points as you don't funding, and then the next thing says not a community awareness. So with awareness comes funding, but yeah, so I don't know how you're going to do it, but God bless you on that one. Good luck.
I think that's a really good point, and I think probably the starting place is, I don't think it's about saying Cordova is this place that has, these terrible rates of whatever. Partly because I don't think that's necessarily true. It's certainly not in all instances. It's more about this is what domestic violence looks like. This is what interpersonal violence looks like. This is what substance abuse looks like. This is what someone struggling with a behavioral health issue looks like. And these are the resources that are available in our community to address those things.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
And really looking at the positive approach. I mean, I think for so many years, even in school, it was like, don't do this, don't do that. And really, instead of saying, let's stop these things and let's not do these things, how can we better be a better person? How can we help someone if we know they're in that situation? And what are some positive things that we can do instead of always looking at it as a negative perspective? And that's really what we've been trying to do, is look at it from positive perspectives, positive reinforcement kind of things.
And I think one of, like, the Choose Respect campaign, I think might be an example of that, right? We didn't go around saying, these are what you don't do. We said, this is what a respectful person looks like. This is what a respectful behavior looks like.
Oh, very good.
This is how you demonstrate respect. So, thank you,
Yeah,
though.
thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, and our next guest speaker is Heather. With the CERT program.
I think I wrote Joni, but maybe is it Mr. Groff that's going to come speak? Sorry.
Mr. Groff.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the opportunity to present our newest CERT members. I want to tell you, first of all, what CERT is. It stands for Community Emergency Response Team. And you've probably seen some of us running around in different drills, disaster drills, and those kind of things. Every so often we have to try to recruit new members because we've been doing this for about 20 years and members grow old and disabled and they move somehow. And so we have to always think about replacing them, just like on the fire department. So anyway, I want to give you a couple of hints about what this group is, and then I'm going to call them up here. So LA Fire Department, and there are some good things that have come out of California. That's one of them. They saw the need to train citizens to be on the spot when there is a disaster, because there's limited resources out there, right? So that was about 1985 when they created the first CERT program. In 2003, President Bush asked all Americans to volunteer in the service of their country. The Citizen Corps program, and that's like Peace Corps, except in this country, Citizen Corps. Citizen Corps program was created to spearhead this effort to harness the power of every individual through education, training, and volunteer service to make communities safer, stronger, and better prepared to respond to the threats of terrorism, crime, public health issues, and disasters of all kinds. CERT was selected as one of the primary programs offered to the American public to meet this challenge. So, our newest CERT members are Christine Hyde, Christopher, and come on up here and maybe stand right there along next to Clay. Chip Etier, Stephanie Bellegarde is absent tonight, but she's the fourth one. Now, that doesn't sound like big numbers, but we'll take any number.
Oh, wow.
For the short class.
And I have prepared a couple of remarks, if you permit me. So, these folks are trained in these things. Extinguishing small fires. Obviously, they don't carry fire hoses and have fire trucks, so just fires can't be these big raging infernos. Disaster medical skills. Rescue trapped victims. Organizing volunteer workers, because in any disaster, volunteers just show up, but they don't know what to do, and these folks are trained on helping them know what to do and directing them. Disaster psychology, that's a kind of an interesting one. Yeah, we don't tell somebody to buck up after their house just fell down, right? And terrorism awareness. They are self-deployed and equipped with essential tools and supplies. They begin their work after an obvious disaster, starting in their neighborhood, and then when they have that taken care of, they will move on to another neighborhood or go down to the fire department and assist fire department in whatever they are doing. Citizens like these folks understand the need for training and preparedness, and they will be essential resources. Part of the solution, not part of the problem. They are capable and willing, and that's an awesome combination of character traits. As you must know, there is a limit to the number of first responders. So in a disaster, don't count on the big red trucks being everywhere at once. You can pray that there is a CERT member in your neighborhood, or you could step up and be part of the solution. Just saying. I am grateful for this latest CERT class, and as a first responder myself, I draw much comfort in the knowledge that they and others previously trained will be out there in our community saving lives and protecting property. Thank you for what you've done so far and what you will probably do in the future. So I present to you Christine, Christopher Mara, Chip Etier, and Stephanie Bellegarde, who is absent.
So on behalf of the city of Cordova, thank you for your dedication and volunteerism for the community and for the hours of training and availability to help when there's a disaster. We do see them. So Chip, thank you very much. Christine? Thank you. Christopher? Thank you. Thank you.
We get a picture for the paper there? No? No? We got a camera?
Thank you. So a common theme from our guest speakers, commitment to community, and actually 4.25 is not that bad, but that's how you get there. It takes a lot of effort by a lot of volunteers and a lot of dedication. So thank you. We have audience comments regarding agenda items. If you'd like to comment on items on the agenda, you just, okay, I'm not seeing any. We have a pretty good audience tonight. So chairpersons and representatives of boards and commissions. Cordova Community Medical Center. don't think we have a representative tonight. School board.
Good evening, Alex Rustin, Superintendent of Schools. Monday, we started the fourth quarter. So we've got one quarter of school remaining, 9 Wednesdays, if that makes it seem any sooner or any quicker for school to get over. But it's been a great spring so far. As you know, we had a couple of teams, our basketball teams participated at state in the state tournament. While we didn't get to where we wanted to be, certainly the kids exhibited great character and sportsmanship, which I think we can all be proud of as a community. We had our girls basketball coach was named the 2A Coach of the Year, so that was quite an acknowledgement for Cordova as well. And we continue our budget conversations and budget development and looking at what the needs of our students will be for next year. And I would encourage and invite any of you to come to any of our board meetings or any of the work sessions that you see posted regarding our budget, or feel free to stop by my office at any time if you've got questions or want some information, just to kind of see how things are unfolding. I'd be more than happy to make time for you as your schedule permitted. So, graduation is on Saturday, May the 18th, I think around 5:30 or so. We have an awards assembly, academic achievement and awards assembly happening on the 14th of May. So if you're in the neighborhood, in town, feel free to stop by and look for information on times and locations for those events.
Okay, any questions, Council? Councilman Baylor.
Yeah, thanks for being here. And one of the things I was thinking about getting on council is perhaps trying to get the communication better between the school board and the city council. And maybe you have some thoughts and ideas on that later we could discuss. And also maybe reigniting the council seat on school board, coming to meetings. But we all have a lot of meetings, a lot to do. And I don't know if it'd be a scenario where maybe we could get somebody on there, and then if there's something that maybe a council member should be at that meeting, you could let us know. Maybe not expect them to be at every meeting, but I'd love to talk to you more about that, your thoughts and ideas, and maybe we can work something out.
Yeah, that sounds great.
All right, thank you.
And thank you, Alex. I don't know if it's real visible to all the council, but you and the school board members and the incredible amount of effort you put into communicating with the state on a lot of fronts, not only the education, but the marine highway system and the various aspects of the budget that impact you. So seeing you all up at the Legislative Information Office and in Juneau, and that really benefits the whole community as well as our education system. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for that comment. Appreciate it.
Right. Can I give a quick PISWAC update?
Yep, Councilman Baylor.
Okay, so PISWAC had their fall spring meeting here, and they'll have correct me if I'm wrong, and they're gonna, to get back on cycle, they will have their fall meeting also in Cordova now?
That's the rumor.
Yeah, I think that's what was said at the last meeting. And so that was nice, to bring them here. And just, Casey Campbell looks forward to running the corporation for another season, and he's kind of signed on for that, so look forward to a good year.
Okay, great. And yeah, it's important that all those meetings and whatnot help the Cordova economy. And I know you and others put some effort into making sure that those meetings happen here close to Cordova when we can, so thank you. We don't have a student council representative this evening, so we'll go to the consent calendar. And are there any items any council wants to break out separately? Okay, seeing none, roll call vote, please.
On the consent calendar then, David Allison,
Yes.
Ann Schaefer,
Yes.
Jeff Guard,
Yes.
Melina Meyer,
Yes.
David Gleason,
Yes.
Tom Baylor,
Yes.
and Ken Jones is absent, but the consent calendar is approved.
Okay, and just for the record, those items were all grants for various equipment through Homeland Security to the tune of $140,000. So just want to recognize the efforts of city staff in pursuing grant funding in this economic environment that really helps, not to mention keeping our first responders, equipment, communications up to snuff. So thank you. Approval of the minutes, we have none, and no bids for tonight. So we have reports of officers, and I didn't include a written report. I had some travel last week, so I just wanted to give a brief verbal update. I've been working quite a bit on fisheries issues, mostly some correspondence supporting board positions on our federal fisheries board and on our state board of fish that have a balanced perspective and support commercial fisheries and our base economy, and also advocating for the Prince William Sound Tanner crab fishery. And that is, despite the terrible weather, is going pretty well. There's having some good catches. They're coming to Cordova, and appreciate the processors that are willing to process and create that opportunity that does generate raw fish tax revenues for Cordova. So on the raw fish tax vein, we have two public hearings tomorrow in fisheries. One is at 11:15 up at the Legislative Information Office, and that's for shellfish hatcheries. And I'm going to testify on that one. We do have we have one new and one pending new shellfish permit here. But all the seed stock, or most of it's imported from outside the state. And it's a limiting factor because if they can't get enough spats or other seed stock, they can't produce. So having state hatcheries is something that's, I think, beneficial for us to support. And then the other hearing is at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. That's on the raw fish tax revenues. So, and a part of that is Alaska Municipal League organized the mayors, especially of communities that are most impacted. So Dutch Harbor, Kodiak, Cordova. There's 10 of us that are already pre-scheduled to speak to finance. And it's a Senate bill to repeal the raw fish tax and give it all to the state coffers, basically. But just so that we understand, I have been in frequent, almost daily at times, correspondence with John Bitney through this session. And he said, really, the senator's purpose for this is to get a lot of positive feedback from the communities explaining and communicating how important this is to their economies. So I think they just wanted to capture that on the record, and it really isn't their intention to promote this bill or to take those funds away from the communities. Also, Bitney circulated an email to us recommending an approach for council. You had asked Bitney when he made his presentation in person a couple meetings ago, what should we be doing in this kind of climate? Where's our time best spent? How can we best advocate? So he circulated that email that just kind of said some of the key points and where to communicate those, including some letters of support and whatnot. I plan to be working on implementing some of those, working with the city manager to get those key correspondences out, and then of course testifying at the LIO like tomorrow is a component of that as well. So see what else we have here. The Cordova Community Foundation, I don't know if council's heard of that or aware of it, but as Barb and Nicole mentioned, we did get that approval for our Cordova Communities Foundation. And what that is, it's a managed foundation, basically, with very low overheads, I think 1 or 2%. The Rasmussen Foundation has a group that manages those funds. They set up all the structure, including all the bylaws and everything, for how funds can be dispersed. And the Rasmussen Foundation actually has a fairly significant match component. So as the community, Cordova, and the nonprofits in the community raise funds to build essentially a community permanent fund to fund nonprofits and so forth, they have matching funds up to $25,000, and then there's some other pieces. So it's a way for us to build fairly rapidly over 3 years a fund to help create a funding resource for like the coalition and other nonprofits, so that doesn't necessarily have to come out of the city budget if it's something we want to fund. And again, with the low overheads and external management, it's a great process. And already some other communities that have been approved for this have had people donate from their wills, their trust, and they very quickly built multi-million-dollar foundations that have become a significant part of their community funding. So it's a lot of effort went into that by Kristen Carpenter and several other members that kind of shepherded that through almost over the last 2 years, and that finally got approved, and it's a great opportunity. So I think that's about all I had on my short list. I also wanted to recognize Robbie Lewis in attendance and the fact that he's moved back to Cordova and is actively managing the radio station. I've had the opportunity to participate in a program there, and that's a great resource, whether it's advertising or to have talk programs from different organizations and whatnot. So welcome back, and it's great to have you. And thank you for covering things like city council meetings as well. So were there any questions, council? Or? Okay. Alan.
Last week,
Manager's report.
Last week, Councilman Guard and I were able to testify on the Alaska Marine Highway System. We were one of two of none that got to testify in the first go around. So we were pretty happy about that. We were scheduled on the agenda, so we got to. They were doing 4 and 4, 4 citizens, 4 LIO members. By the time they got to us, they did 2 LIOs, and that was it. But we were on the agenda, so we got to give our input. The fish, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Fish tax tomorrow is going to be important at 3 o'clock. I want to give happy news because we don't often get a lot of happy news. And thanks to the efforts of Paul Trumley and Mike Hicks, we received confirmation today that Valdez donated one of their fire trucks to us to replace one of ours that had some problems that we were going to have to spend a significant amount of money to repair. So we'll be doing some appropriate thank yous to Valdez regarding the donation of that fire truck. And when we get it, we're going to have it upstairs so you can go look at it, because there's nothing more fun than that. But really a big thanks to Paul and Mike. They put in a lot of work on this, and you know, in addition to their grant efforts, particularly Paul's grant efforts here with emergency management and Homeland Security, we really do well in that arena. Which reminds me that coming up, pay attention to the agenda, the schedule for Alaska Shield, which is the first 12 days of April, basically. And we're going to see a lot of activity regarding that. We have some issues we're trying to straighten out right now with attorneys involved, which always isn't fun, but we'll get them straightened out by the time it all starts. I think you'll be quite impressed with everything that's happened in that community service and spirit. On the 26th, next week, as you know, the CEO of CCMC, Scott Mitchell, has resigned, and they're going to hold their first, well, we had one yesterday. We had one yesterday, a meeting to begin sort of the kickoff of the recruiting process. And next Tuesday, the 26th, they're going to interview 3 recruiting firms, intending to hire one of those firms to recruit their next CEO. Their committee has 2 of their board members. They're asking 2 council members or council appointees to be on that board, 2 of their hospital staff. So I'm going to leave that to the mayor this evening to figure out the 2 of you that will attend that meeting there. It's from 5 to 7 next Tuesday, 1 firm at 5, 1 firm at 6, and 1 firm at 7. So it's a pretty substantial commitment. And I have their packets of information that they submitted for their bid, basically to be the recruiter. I have 2 packets available for whoever wants to attend those. I'll leave that to the mayor to seek volunteers on that. You're going to see an uptick in the COHO process. We received a qualified bid on that, and so that disposal process is going to start picking up with ordinances and all of those things. So you'll see that coming. If you have any questions on that, you can give Leif a holler, and he has more details on that. we've been working hard on getting audit information to you, getting the next audit started, coordinating with CCMC on their audit. Their auditors are going to be here in 2 weeks, so we're going to coordinate them, trying to get this out early. And we've been working hard on the financial reporting, thanks to Dean, and I think you're pleased with that this evening. And I think that's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Questions, council? I'm going to revert to the mayor's report because you reminded me about 4 or 5 things that I'd forgotten to cover. So I did just get an update from Bitney this morning, and he said his overall concern on where our biggest threat lies in this budget, governor's budget, has kind of shifted from the marine highway system to the school bond debt reimbursement. So there has been, and that is largely because of a huge outcry across the state. If anything, the marine highway system funding has actually pulled in more support from some of the off-road communities. So we want to continue to keep pressing on that, but Cordova has had a significant voice in that effort, from the school board to the city manager to our 2 representatives, Sylvia Lang and Mike Anderson, and a host of individuals that have participated in that. For my part, there's one little piece, and that was Mayor Berkowitz in Anchorage and I had kind of collaborated on a letter. The timing was wrong towards the end of last session during the election cycle, but I'm dusting that off to see if we can't get that joint letter with the McDowell report behind it that shows the economic connection between Cordova and Anchorage and how important that is for both communities. That helps pull in some support. Yeah. Oh, and as far as a bond debt reimbursement, Bitney said he's concerned that we're going to see a reduction. He doesn't know how much. He said that it sounds like there's a lot of legislative support for trying to keep it as close to full funding as possible. The problem is with the governor's budget, for the legislature to overturn it, it requires a supermajority of 75%. So that's 45 out of 60 votes, and that is going to be a huge high hurdle. So there are going to be things that a majority of the legislature opposes, but are still going to go forward in the governor's budget. So that's a concern. CCMC, as far as the 2 representatives Alan just mentioned, I would like to participate in that if council would have it, just partly because of participation in the facilitation process, and also just some basic skills in hiring and recruitment. And then a councilman, I think I would suggest maybe Councilman Schaefer, partly because of, frankly, a lack of history and knowledge of the CCMC system, and the importance, I think, of getting maybe someone on board who not only has hospital administration skills, but also kind of look at the broader context of the need, I think, for the health services to coordinate in the community. So, but again, I'll leave that up to council, and then see if others want to volunteer. The Coho bid, I'm just going to mention Cordova Electric Cooperative may have an interest in that bid. So when it comes to discussions on those, I may be recusing myself. We just have a non-binding kind of letter of agreement to look at the potential to partner in that space to improve and coordinate our services to the community. So, and that testimony on the marine highway system, by the way, was 294 people. It broke a record, all-time record for Legislative Information Office testimony. So the other item is opportunity zone funding. So in the new tax laws, there was provisions for opportunity zones, which creates huge tax incentives for businesses to invest in opportunity zones. So once you get that designation, a business, whether it's someone who wants to participate in a waterfront development or open, a new business or invest in any way in the community, and I think of things like a floating fuel dock or, again, waterfront infrastructure, they don't have to pay any capital gains on the earnings there. So it really encourages a lot of private sector investment. And we missed a window on that, but I've been working with Senator Murkowski's office, and I'm probably going to expand that to Senator Sullivan's office to see if there's a way to get an exemption, extension, somehow participate in that program, because I think it could be pretty significant for any kind of renovations or waterfront investments we want to make. And that segues into the very last piece. I will miss the April 3rd meeting. I'll be back in DC for some meetings, but I'm also going to try to meet with our congressional delegation there, and that's one of the items I want to bring forward. So,
I did have a question for Alan.
yeah.
So, how do we move forward on that 0.5% raw fish tax? We have to get an ordinance for that, right? Or make an ordinance?
Correct.
So should we get a meeting to hammer out those details on
Well,
this, or?
Our intention was originally to have something for you to discuss at the April 3rd meeting.
Okay,
And right now, the attorney's office, there's a gentleman there who works on these kinds of things that is going to have something in the hopper to us. And we're going to have a discussion with him so that you'll see some on April 3rd.
so then we'll have to have a few readings of,
At least 2 readings of it, yeah.
so it'll probably be like June before we could actually have an,
No, I think a month ahead of that.
okay, thanks.
But I'm happy to follow whatever procedure you want to do. The trouble is getting us all together to hammer out those details. Typically, what we do is we take a crack at an ordinance and then you guys comment and refine it how you want it to be.
Yeah, I just figured the sooner the better since fishing's
Yep.
rolling.
Any other questions on mayor's or manager's reports?
I just got to say on the debt relief,
Yeah.
2 years ago, our number was 726, or in 18, and this year in 17 it was 9 something, then it went down to 726, and it was 926 again this year.
Mhm.
Is what we're anticipating. So, we've endured some reductions before, but obviously the impact to us, if it went to 0, or even if it were cut in half, is really tremendous to our budget.
Mhm. Councilman Guard?
While you were on the phone with Bitney about powers and the playing fields and stuff down in Juneau, what concern is there for the governor's roadshow? A lot of the impediments to the governor's budget so far has been a vocal outcry of the populace at documentable get-togethers like hearings with legislature and stuff. So if we've got the governor's roadshow with possible ticketing and attendance issues because of facilitation, what worries have we got about that on positions of power in Juneau?
So I'm not sure I'm
The
following your question.
It's my understanding that the governor's roadshow is being facilitated by a conservative libertarian group, that there are concerns about, because it's going to be a ticketed event, you will have to have a ticket to get in, yada, yada, yada. So if they
Okay.
can curry the attendance they want, they can then control the outcome of the statements in it. So that was my worry when I read the deal. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'd have to ask how that might play out. I know at a high level, there's a lot of concern that 15 votes isn't very many. That's that's just a fourth of the legislature, so it isn't going to take a very big group to support the governor's budget. Yeah, Councilman Baylor.
So speaking of roadshow, there was about 20 state people out on Whiteshed today, and not now, but maybe for the next meeting, we can get an update. Are they moving forward, or it's just still the planning stage? I don't know if staff knows that, but maybe in the next meeting, get a quick update.
Yeah.
Tomorrow.
Oh, is there? I didn't know
Whiteshed
about that.
DOT meeting,
Oh, perfect. There you go. Here?
Okay.
5 PM.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, a clerk's report.
I think we had one more under the manager's report. Sam was going to
Yeah, that's right. Of element.
show a couple of slides, or no? Where's your computer? You're grounded.
my mind.
Oh, there it is. Hide it.
Oh. since we have some new council members, I'm just gonna do, and please help me talk into the mic. I'm gonna do a quick little overview of the STIP grant, which is how the White Shed Road is funded for Second Street. And it's a grant that's due May 15th. The reason we're looking at Second Street is because, thank you. Do I have to do this first?
Oh, I thought you pushed that button.
You broke it.
I did not.
I'll just, while she's working on that, I will just reiterate too that DOT is going to be working on Power Creek Road this year. That's a $1.9 million job, so that circulates through the community. And they're also moving forward with the Fleming Spit job. But for example, at Cordova Electric, we're going to install replace our utilities this summer before the asphalt works next year, and that's reimbursable work. So it's we have a fair amount of work going on in the community over the next couple of years.
I think this fits nicely into our previous financial conversation. You know, we obviously looking at the strategic plan, one of the focus has always been, you know, we're going to pursue grants as much as we can. And so the objective for us and as we move forward is how are we going to fund our portion of this? And we had an initial presentation on this, so Sam is doing an update with new council members, and you'll have an opportunity to say yay or nay to this as we move forward.
What's the match on this grant again?
We're
Oh.
Yeah.
There's a few missing from this meeting as well as the
Yeah.
seated ones.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is our beautiful Second Street. We all know about Second Street. This is Public Works' #1 priority to get completed. Second Street runs from the corner of Davis above the Darky all the way to the Copper River Highway. And I know Second Street potholes are famous, and I've talked to a lot of people about them. So the Alaska Department of Transportation Community STIP grant is a great fit for Second Street because it is not so safe routes to school centered, because it does not fit into the safe route to school categories. While there's some issues with kids, it doesn't meet the criteria as well. So right now there's $50 million available. Unfortunately, the city of Cordova will be competing in the urban rural category due to the way they have defined populations. Remote is only for communities that don't have roads and do not have ferry service. If you don't fall into that, you get to compete with Anchorage, Fairbanks, all the urban areas. If we get the award, it would be in August. It's federal fiscal year, so that's October. 2020, 22, 2023, as you know from White Shed, that grant application was open in 2012, and it is now 2019. They are working on the design. There was some issues back and forth, but it is moving forward. So it's a long process. It's not going to happen like Adams. It is a required 9.03% match. DOT will develop all the project cost estimates, which is awesome. We don't have to pay an engineer to do that. We are required to have a resolution supporting the match and the maintenance of the project in the future. This is just an overlay of Second Street to get a kind of a concept of how long it is. It is about 1,900 linear feet, which would be about 3,800 linear feet of sidewalks, depending on how the design and everything ran out in the end. So I've already talked about upgrading the sidewalks. The reason there are so many potholes and that road is such a nightmare is because there is no stormwater drains on that road. There is not a stormwater drain that runs from Davis to the Copper River Highway except for up the avenues, right? Avenues go up the hill, Second Street goes down towards the Copper River Highway. So the only place stormwater can go is over the edge or to those catchments along there. There's one on Adams, there's Council, and Browning. So that's what creates these issues every spring. We also know about the area from Adams to Lake, where there's head-on parking on both sides. Kids are walking back and forth through there. You know, some kind of plan to try to develop with safety there. It would reduce the O&M cost for the city dramatically. They did like 32 potholes Tuesday on 2nd Street only, and there's still more to go. And another good one is that the Sunset View Apartments, which is a state-owned facility for elderly and disabled people, there's no sidewalks out of that place. You come down onto Davis and you're on a gravel road, icy conditions. So that's our selling points for the grant. So when I mentioned that we have to compete with the urban areas, the things that they have on us, there's 2 things that they can really get points for that we probably will not be able to get any points for. Well, bridges, we won't be able to get any points for because we're not doing a bridge project. But safety, the points are really put out if you've had a fatality, a serious injury, documented, numerous, even near misses, but has to be documented on site with EMS personnel. We don't have that, which is a good thing.
Okay, good.
What?
Can we stay?
Oh, I just saying, there was a collision on a piece of electrical equipment on 2nd.
Oh yeah, I watched that from my Forest Service window. That's
Yeah.
right. I don't know if that counts though.
Was it documented?
It was the cops that come.
CEC has a documentary.
So the criteria that we can apply for, we can have, there's 11. So 8 of those, 4 of them are, I feel like, and this is my judgment, I don't know what the scoring committee is gonna say, is that we can get 3 points for 4 of them. We could get 5 points for the other 4. We will probably get 0 for 2. The only one we can control is the match. So here comes the sell for you guys. And the other thing I want to talk about the match is that they're going to spread it out over time. It's not going to be like Adams where we handed them a check for 135 grand. It will be spread out during the phase. This is how they did, this is 7th Street, how the match for 7th Street will be spread out if we get it. Well, it'll be based off those totals. The match isn't $867,000. Okay. So here's what happens when you up your match. It's a very interesting way to do it, but this is how they do it. So for each percentage, you could get 0.2 of a point. So there you can see, if we do 9%, the minimum match, we get 0 points for that. So that would be a third criteria that we would have 0 points in. And if we up, every time we up, we can get more points. So while we will never compete with some of those urban areas where they've had fatalities or where they're working on bridges or those kinds of things, what we need to do is get the points up where we can outcompete the communities that are similar to us, who also don't have fatalities, who also don't have bridges, you know, so that we can be just a few more points over the top of that category. So this would be, you know, the ideal would be, of course, 25%, you'd get 16 points. You would get a very large chunk of those 2 that we can't get made up. But it's a lot of money, so it's something to think about. We will have to do a resolution that says we will support some kind of match, even if we do 9.03%. So I would like to be able to get the cost estimate back from DOT prior to that resolution. But if we get to the crunch time where May 15th is coming around and they aren't coming back with that cost estimate in a timely manner, we may just have to do some kind of not to exceed and then base it off what comes out. So I will have the information, 90% of the information they need by Friday to DOT, and they'll start the cost estimate. And I'm hoping, I think it's a pretty optimistic hope, that we would have something by April 3rd. Probably more likely the second meeting in April. And that's when you guys will have to make the final call on the match and how much we want to move with. So I don't know if anybody has any questions or if anything's not clear. but that's kind of the gig.
Match page?
This one?
Yes.
Yes. Seems like a kind of complicated way to do it, but that's how they do it.
So either one of us at the table here has got to volunteer to die between now and the middle of May, or we have to figure out how far up we're willing to go with this conversation.
Yeah, and the thing is, you figure that in those bigger cities, they probably have more than one. So we need a serious injury, maybe a fatality,
How about a
Gotta
limb?
happen on second.
Can you offer up a limb?
On second. Preferably right in the middle of a pothole.
So to have a decent chance at this, where are you thinking we have to land?
I would love to see 25%, but I get it. I mean, I work here, I hear it. I think we cannot do the minimum. We cannot go in there at 9.3 because we're just cutting our own wrist when we do that, because we don't have any advantage over anybody, So I don't know what that noise is.
What is going on?
It's a mouse. So I mean, I would love to see 25%, but I get it.
That $4 million estimate, is that just to give us a number to work?
That
with
is
an
my
idea, Or where
estimate.
did that, okay.
That is my estimated, I should have said that, yeah. Based on average of the bond for the pavement down here, that the 7th Street, which was the last ATAP grant that we talked about, their cost estimate, 3rd Street, and
Uneducated.
I'm forgetting one more. And then I created a linear foot estimate. Some had design, some did not have design. Some were recent, I mean, Adams was that was one I was forgetting. Adams fairly recent on cost. So that's where my $4 million comes from. I think there's a lot of infrastructure work to be done. I mean, removing storm drains from, or roof drains, I'm sorry, and then getting them into the storm drains, that's a lot of infrastructure work to do.
To go along with this is just gonna be the road surface and the curbs and sidewalks and that stuff. So
No.
anything we're doing down in the ditch, like
No,
the
so,
storm drains,
so the idea would be that we would put an entire storm drain system in.
I know, but would that be covered
Yes,
by the grant?
yes.
Okay.
The entire storm drain system would be covered by the grant. The actual road and the sidewalks, curb and gutter creates the drainage that reduces the craziness of the potholes and the subgrade. And then dealing with, and the one I didn't mention too was that corner on Council and Council and 2nd Street by Bedarkie, where you have a truck or a large vehicle that sticks out and you're swinging over into the other lane when you're trying to make that turn, trying to reconfigure that area to eliminate that issue.
But
So,
I think what I was trying to get at, and I could have stated it better, but there's other work we want to do under 2nd Street while we're there, like, was it water lines or sewer lines?
the water and the sewer, actually the water lines are fairly current. So these are a couple things I've learned since the last time we talked. 1993, I believe they upgraded all the water lines. So those are in pretty good shape. The sewer lines, Joel just got back, he's looking into it. We'll look and see what's there. I will throw it into the grant. Whether they'll fund it, I can't tell you, and then we'll have to make a decision at that point. But the advantage we have with this grant is the long-term that it takes to get there. Sewer can start putting some money back to deal with it if we need to.
Okay, that's all I was trying to get at, was if we leverage ourselves to the hilt to get Peter, and then we still got Paul to pay.
Yeah, no, we can try.
So it might almost actually from that bond amortization chart by 2027 or something, we might be getting into a better place. Councilman Baylor.
So was this a staff decision, like this is your number one priority?
This was a
in the-
public, so we've been talking about doing grants, improving infrastructure. That's been part of the strategic plan. And as grant opportunity comes up, we try to make the best fit for that grant.
Mhm.
So when we did the pavement, we had top priorities, and it was down here and then Second Street.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering,
Yep.
yeah. I
And
understand the
then-
grant, but yeah, so that was, okay.
Public Works is, that is our number one priority in Public Works is Second Street for this type of,
And it-
you know, ability to,
it's kind of based on the repeated having to go up there and spend money.
yeah.
on-
And the roof drains and sump pumps is an issue that we have worked with DEC to kind of keep moving with that happening, because when we have these huge rains, I mean, you know,
Right.
you think about the square footage of the roofs and
Yeah.
how much water that's dumping into the sewer system. It's blowing it out. It messes with the bugs. You know, they don't like that. DEC doesn't like that. But they also understand the, you know, the difficulties of fixing those kinds of things. So that's a big thing for them too.
Right.
And sewer costs them money every time they have to deal with that stuff.
I guess, well, for my comment would be if this kind of gets to where we're taking this up and voting on it, I would literally like to be handheld, walk down that street and kind of really read into that project. Because you know we're going to be answering a lot of questions from the public once we vote on a $500,000 to $1 million project like that. But
I mean, when the cost estimate comes back from DOT, it'll be similar to this picture. Oh, sorry, wrong picture.
Mhm.
This picture. So we won't have a design, right? It'll be part of the grant to create the design.
Right.
So what we'll provide them with is the issues that exist on the ground.
Yeah.
And we can certainly walk through that, but I can't give you a design.
No, I understand that. Yeah, just walking through and kind of pointing out the issues,
Yeah.
because you
Yeah,
like to
and I
be able
can
to answer
also
those
s-
questions.
I can also send you what I send to DOT, which is block by block of why we're asking for this money.
That'd be
and what
helpful.
the issues are on each block.
That'd be helpful, thank you.
But it's not done yet.
Yeah.
Questions, council? Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Supplemental managers report.
Yeah.
I kind of had it written down as well, so.
Okay. Yes. If I could get it to turn off, it would be good.
Okay, clerk's report.
I sent you all an email today with a lot of attachments and some links and information for new council members or existing council members. And I'm gonna try and make a plan of sending those kinds of emails here and there and to keep you guys, you know, on top of strategies for meetings and things like that. Because quasi judicial has definitely been hitting us lately, and so if you notice the way I changed that, disclosures of conflicts of interest, and you know, it's kind of hard to be a new council member and not be thrown into some kind of a training, but at the same time, I think you'll learn a lot just being here and with your neighboring council members right here, you know, saying things and leading the way. That's kind of how you pick stuff up. But obviously, my door's always open, and I'd like to, you know, anybody's welcome to come in and we can talk about things. And as far as, you know, one of the links was to AML and, you know, the newly elected officers training in November. So everybody keep that on your radar. As it gets closer, I'll start asking. But we did put some funding back in for 19 for some council training. So I'd love to send a few of you or as many of you who want to go. Especially, we'll see what happens with the governor's budget and Juneau this session. Might be pretty important. AML's going to take the lead on a lot of things. And you already said some things about assessment notices being out, and that was also in the email today about the appeals are rolling in, and I've been getting a lot of phone calls, and actually that's been great. I've been spending a lot of time on the phone with people, and Tina has as well, or people walking in the door. And when they hear from us about how across the board this, that, they seem okay with it, you know, you'll still get appeals, which is fine, and I encourage appeals if people think that their value is really not something they could sell their house for, it's not market value, or they have some deficiencies that really need to be seen by an assessor, this is that opportunity. This is why you appeal, because they can't go inside every building every year or even every few years. So anyway, and so BOE will be coming up, which is quasi-judicial, one of the main roles of council. I'll talk about that pending agenda, some upcoming dates. And that's about all I have to report on. I can answer questions.
Can you remind me when the BOE date is?
April 15th.
15? And when is the assessor in town?
We left a couple of weeks between, the appeal deadline is the 5th. So they will be in sometime between the 5th and 15th. But sometimes they do come kind of at the tail end of it, because then they just stick around for the meeting and do a lot of their, try and work things out with the appellants over that last weekend. So I don't have exact dates that they're coming yet.
It may have been on the paperwork, I didn't see it, but what is our current mill rate?
2018 was 11.81, but we won't set the 19 mill rate until it has to be by June 15th. So I did a quick sample calculation on a couple of properties. If the full assessed value of what was mailed out winds up being our full assessed value, but it won't, because there are some appeals, so some will get changed. But if it were to remain consistent with what was mailed, and the budget is calling for a collection of 2.433 million, which is the same amount as last year. I had 2 properties come in at, one would have been, I think the mill rate would have gone down to like 11.04 to accommodate for the raise in assessed value. And the 2 properties I was looking at would see an increase of $65 for the year, and one was $40 for the year. So it was minimal increase.
Yeah, well, I'll be one of those in there. I think what gets people's attention is not the small incremental raises, but when you see a big chunk on your assessments, like, good question to ask why. So, thank you.
So Councilman Baylor, just a couple things too. I'll just mention that was part of the strategic plan that we would fix the total amount of property tax. We collected, I think, about $1.27 million. 2.53, wow.
5?
Okay.
Sorry.
So we just kind of fixed it at that. So if property values rise, the mill rate's actually been dropping in response, so that we're basically, and then the same with the sales tax. Council didn't want to raise the property or sales taxes. So, and then I just think I should mention also that the contract appraiser for the city of Cordova is the Appraisal Company of Alaska, and my wife does work for that firm, so she doesn't participate in the Board of Equalization in Cordova. So, but I just wanted to mention that for the record. So, other questions for City Clerk? Okay. So we have correspondence is noted in the packet. And ordinances and resolutions, we have resolution 03-19-14. That's a resolution of the City Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, authorizing the City of Cordova to amend the fiscal year 19 budget in the amount of $25,000 for the design drawings for a renovation expansion of the Odiak Camper Park.
Move to approve.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Councilman Baylor.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Allison moved it, though. Allison moved it.
Okay, that's right. Councilman Allison, you would like to speak to your motion?
Yeah, we've talked about expanding the camper park for some time, several years, and it's an opportunity to get that going. They do have money in their funds, so this doesn't come out of the general fund. It's there's no camper park fund there. This can come out of and get some drawings and maybe get some grants to actually get the job done. So I'm in favor of it.
And that second was,
Schaefer.
Schaefer.
okay. Councilman Schaefer, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, just this has come up before council, even in the time that I've been on board, as wanting to expand our RV spaces or look for new places to build. And we've got funding in the reserve for the Odeak Camper Park to produce these drawings and these plans. And you can't even apply for the grant without the plans. So I think that would give us a good foot in the door. And this grant seems like a really good fit, given that it was the original funding source and the priorities that are part of the grant really line up with the priorities that we have for Odeak Camper Park. So supportive of it.
Okay, Councilman Baylor.
Yeah, I really wasn't around for the discussion. I acknowledge it needs work. So just kind of the Reader's Digest version of this. So are we looking to expand slips plus run water and sewer to the expanded slips? Is that the, and existing and expanded? Right.
spaces new. 6 new spaces.
Okay. All right,
Moving
Yeah.
ground.
I support that.
Okay, further discussion, council? Okay, all those in favor?
Well, it's a budget amendment.
Okay,
Kind of be a roll call.
I thought I saw a resolution.
So
Okay, that's right, roll call vote.
on the resolution, Melina Meyer,
Yes.
Ken Jones is absent. Ann Schaefer,
Yes.
Jeff Guard,
Yes.
David Allison,
Yes.
David Gleason,
Yes.
Tom Baylor.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, thank you. Don't have unfinished business on the agenda. Under new and miscellaneous business, council election of vice mayor to serve for 1 year. What is the will of?
So it could, somebody could nominate somebody. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'd like to nominate Melina Meyer.
I'll second that. Do we second?
You don't have to
Um,
second a
no, so
nomination.
there's,
So you
are there further
just up.
nominations?
There could be further, yeah.
Okay, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you for chairing the April 3rd meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Vice Mayor Meyer.
There we go. Jump right in.
And pending agenda calendar, elected and appointed officials list. A couple of items I'd like to add to the April 17th agenda, a executive session item for the extension of the city manager's contract. So that would be city council and city manager discussing that. And also, at council's option, we could do it on the April 17th meeting or schedule a special meeting, but like to review the review our strategic plan, especially with new councilmen on board. Just kind of go through what the current status is. And frankly, we have accomplished a lot of the strategic plan elements. So it's a good time to do a reboot and kind of revisit that plan. So be open. We've been having a lot of guest speakers and presentations and meetings, but I think it's time for us to focus on city business for a couple meetings. So, is there any preferences, Councilman Baylor?
Well, I guess I just got, yeah, we got a question about that, and maybe I got something for the agenda. I'll let you finish.
Okay, I'm done. I'm just asking if council would like to schedule a
We don't have work sessions for either of the April meetings, right?
Not that I'm aware of.
okay.
So you were not going to be around on the 3rd, so you were thinking strategic plan.
That's
for
why I was thinking the
17th?
17th, yeah.
Okay,
Okay. In work session then before the meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
so the 6 o'clock work session on the 17th will be the strategic plan.
Did you have a question or a suggestion?
No, but you were talking about the manager's contract on the 17th.
Yeah. So that would just be an executive session. So and it's just conversation, if the manager is interested in extending his contract, if the council wants to discuss that, we can do that in open session or an executive session with a manager, so.
Okay. I guess before that, I don't know about Dave there, but I would be like to read in on, maybe on your valuation and what went on there. And,
Oh, sure, absolutely.
you know,
So we can get a copy of the current manager's contract and the last performance evaluation, just to prepare for that meeting, yeah.
Thank
Okay, you bet. That's a good point. Okay, so it sounds like an April 17th work session
Okay.
and an executive.
And did you have anything for the 3rd yet? Did we know? My goodness, we're not going to have a work session? Because I know Leif wants May.
Yeah, make it real quick.
May 1st, we're going to do a joint work session with planning on the comprehensive plan.
May what? I'm sorry.
May 1st is the first May meeting. So the work session before that will be joint work session with planning commission on comprehensive plan.
Well, I think we can have a work session on the 3rd.
Yeah,
Yeah, we don't want to
but we don't want to waste that time.
let that time go by, but I'll figure out something to be on there.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else for the pending agenda?
Well, and then I just, there's just some dates, so the March 21st, tomorrow, that came up already, but 5 to 7 in here is DOT's meeting. So I think we've got it advertised, and I just put that a quorum of any boards. Oh, we didn't put that. Oh, yeah, because it's a DOT meeting, so I'm not worried. It's like a wedding. You guys are good. Oh, and there, I can take 6 off of there because we're doing that. Okay, otherwise, there's just the other things like BOE are on the calendar. I guess it should be more consistent of that putting them on both places, but. All right, that's it. Colorful calendar.
Okay, Councilman Allison.
I'd just like to move and ask unanimous consent for appointing Mayor and Councilmember Schaefer to the CCMC
Second.
CEO search.
I have a motion, a second, discussion. Okay, hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Opposed? Okay,
I'm still on pending agenda.
all right, pending agenda. Councilman Bailey.
Just, well, along with your evaluation, and I'm assuming you set some goals, and we get right into that for this year.
Mhm.
And I would have a question too on the evaluations, and it's kind of, did we do any, we had a couple key personnel leave, did we do any exit interviews? Did you do any, did we get any input from where we're headed or what we could do better or anything like that?
So those are city staff, so that's in the manager's court, so I don't know if we do exit interviews. Okay, I'm seeing a no, so, okay.
I would think that was something the mayor could possibly do too. I had something else in my mind here. What's that? Oh, the UBS, it was a good update, but were we supposed to give any direction, or is it just an update? I mean, we didn't really, I mentioned, about the only thing we should really, or I feel that we should really affect is our risk tolerance, and then kind of mentioned the fact that with the way the governor's budget's coming, are we going to need a little reserve that we can access? They said we do have some, and for me, I would leave that up to you and the manager to determine, but I think it should be considered, and I think it should be considered for the next 4 years, frankly.
Mhm. Yeah.
Just a thought, and then, do we, as a group, need to sit down and think about the risk, or are we happy with the way they're managing it? We never really kind of.
Yeah, we haven't really, I didn't think that was the right time and place, but that's.
No, and I agree.
Yeah,
I'm just wondering
I think
if this
that's-
is something
those are
that we
good
should do
points.
in the future.
And so also there was a resolution from, I want to say 2013 or something, that actually provided guidance. And maybe we should revisit that. Let's put that on a pending agenda to review our investment portfolio. Because there's a past resolution that kind of gave guidance, and you're right, we kind of have a new environment where we need to maybe retool that. And I think there's also some code language on how we balance our portfolio and where we weight it. So we do have some rails around our investments, so.
Okay.
Yeah, no, had the same thought, and,
All right, thank you. That's all I had.
okay, great.
I have one thing for pending agenda. It'd be nice to have a joint meeting with the CCMC board maybe. Because I know that we budgeted out $600,000. We know that they're going to need more. They're getting a new CEO. I think it'd be good to meet with them about the direction that we want them to be going in, or have them tell us what direction that they're wanting to go into, and just have a conversation before they come asking for some more money.
And we've got, so we have the draft CCMC audit in hand now. that was circulated to council, so that's a good thing to be looking at as well. We finally got some audited financials there to look at, so.
I would support that suggestion. I'd also like if we could go in executive session so we could ask some hard questions, if that's possible.
Okay.
Do we want to come up with a date on that, or am I just going to put that on pending agenda for sometime?
If it goes out very far, they're gonna have.
Right. I
We're going to
think
get
sooner
into
rather than later. If we don't
I
have a
know.
big agenda, let's do it next meeting.
Well, they're meeting on Tuesday, so perhaps we can solidify some dates with them.
You'll be at that?
I will.
Oh, you won't, but Clay and Ann will.
Yeah,
Even if they have already pick a new CEO, I think we should still just talk with them. We had talks with MVE and things are just changing in kind of all entities now.
okay. So it sounds like it's gonna probably land on one or the, it may or may not wanna land on one of the normal meeting dates, so council's open to a special meeting to do that. Okay, I'm seeing nods, so great. So maybe Susan, we can just get an email to their CCMC.
Okay.
They may just be in the process of electing a new chairman following their election, so, and we'll mention it on Tuesday as well. So, okay. All right, good suggestion. Any others, council, pending agenda? Okay. Hearing none. Audience participation. Anyone like to participate? Okay, we still have some audience left, so. All right, seeing none, council comments, and I'll start to my left with Councilman Meyer.
I just wanted to say thank you to the fire department. You guys are doing a lot down there with all of the grants and volunteer work and this upcoming training. So thank you for all the work that you guys do down there. And also thank you to everyone that testified for the Alaska Marine Highway. I watched online and I was pleased to see some people from the Anchorage area that were commenting on it. Even though they cut the limit down to 1 minute, I think a lot of people had a lot more to say and they were trying to rush it out. But I think the point was heard, and having more testimonies maybe helped with the numbers of it being a record and everything. And thank you all for voting for me and my confidence of being the vice mayor, and definitely learned a lot this past year. And I have a feeling in this new position, I'll be learning even more. So thank you.
Councilman Allison?
I'd like to echo the thanks to the fire department and Chief Hicks and for all the work that they do for that, and the emergency teams at Cordova's pretty lucky in their emergency responses and what we get for relatively nothing most of the time. So thank you. Thanks to Susie and the Parks and Rec Committee for your work on the Odia Kappa Park. That's been a project we've looked at doing for several years. I still can't imagine it takes so much effort to put in a few trailer spots, but apparently it does. So anyway, thanks for your efforts on that, and look forward to getting that study done and getting some grants for that. So thank you.
I just want to sneak in a comment. I want to thank Councilman Allison for serving as vice mayor and covering quite a few meetings last year, so thank you. Councilman Gleason?
Just thanks to the fire department. We got a great fire department, and that's about it.
And Councilman Schaefer?
Yeah, echo everyone else's comments. Thank you to all our first responders and getting those grants. Also, welcome to council to Councilman Baylor and also Councilman Gleason.
Thank you.
And welcome back.
Councilman Guard? Thank you.
I guess there's just a big ditto on everything that's been said before, but thank you again to Councilmember Allison for keeping us pointed in the right direction on lots of meetings last year. You did a phenomenal job as a vice mayor.